The coast, where land and sea collide. Two different worlds, each which have evolved over millions of years, suddenly brought together in the form of beaches, mudflats and tidal estuaries. At times, it could be difficult to imagine how any life could make this ever-changing landscape its home. But life, like the environments, has evolved to cope, to change and to adapt. Birds, with their gift of flight, flying from miles around to these watery habitats, which could spell disaster for land-dwelling animals. They feast upon the plentiful supply of marine invertebrates that these mudflats and salt marshes along the Norfolk coast have to offer. However, these are only exposed for a short period of time each day in this race against the moving water. Birds in their thousands engulf these mudflats to take advantage of these rich kings. Ultimately, the movement of the tides controls life here. As the water recedes, vast bands of mudflats and underwater habitats are revealed. But as the tide returns and the exposed ground is submerged, birds are forced to take to the wing. They flock together like one huge organism controlled by a single mind, waiting for the high tides of the wash to release their grip and surrender the endless hoard of food. Waders, probably the greatest long-distance migrants of all birds, travelling from all the corners of the earth to congregate in a feeding frenzy. There are several distinct groups, all of which come in various shapes and sizes with colours and calls which help them to identify their fellow species among the swirling mass of wings. They are the specialists of the shoreline and shallow waters. Armed with the tools and techniques, they tirelessly work the mudbanks for the hidden stash of food beneath its surface. Life has not only found its place here, but has found it in a huge variety, each with their own peculiar way in which to survive. Across from the shoreline, where sand dunes and shingle banks act as barriers from the worst of the elements, marshes and reed beds provide excellent refuge for breeding groups of many of our coastal birds. These sheltered conditions are favoured by many species, enabling them to feed undisturbed by the tidal currents. Wildfowl, gulls, waders and even predatory birds are drawn here to hunt and breed. The more common, but by no means less specialised, is the turnstone. As the name suggests, they flip and roll small pebbles and stones with a flick of the bill to expose tiny shellfish and invertebrates. Running back and forth dodging the waves is a favourite technique, rarely staying still for any length of time. The avocet, an elegant black and white bird with an unmistakable upturned bill, congregates in small flocks during the breeding season. In the past, breeding pairs became extinct in the UK. Habitats then created by man in East Anglia provided the perfect requirements for these iconic birds to once again become a familiar sight on our coastal wetlands. It's not all seafaring birds that take advantage of the coastal habitats. The sparrow-sized snow bunting, with their delicately marked plumage and twittering voice, fly to eastern parts of the UK from Iceland and other northern regions. During these winter months, they gather in small flocks on shingle banks and low-lying shores in search of seeds and insects. Their mottled colouring serves as excellent camouflage against the stony background, thus giving them more time to concentrate on finding food. Snow buntings are hardy little birds, and coping with Arctic temperatures means that a quick bathe in our winter climate has little effect on this robust little visitor. Occasionally, other foreign visitors can be found in amongst the clusters of these small birds. Lapland buntings also gather in small flocks, but as with this individual, its cousins the snow buntings have become a suitable substitute. It's not just birds that have become dependent on these habitats. Some mammals have also turned this way of life here to their advantage. These common seals are all year round residents to our coastline. The high sandbanks and tidal estuaries act as ideal nurseries for their young. The pups are able to swim and dive within hours of birth, and the sloping banks of the estuaries make ideal learning spots for them to gain vital swimming skills. When in water, seals become proficient hunters. However, they are somewhat cumbersome on land and rarely venture more than a stone's throw from the safety of the water. This particular group has learned that waiting for food to come to them can make life far easier. They haul themselves out onto the estuary banks during low tide and relax until the tide returns, bringing with it a host of fish, drawn here by the rich feeding that estuaries have to offer. Their thick layer of blubber insulate them from the cold, and when diving they slow their heart rate down to just a few beats per minute. This allows them to stay underwater for longer in search of prey. Life here has taken time to become part of a delicate balance, and its inhabitants cannot cope with an environmental transformation as this within such a short period of time, thus resulting in a possible loss of many of our ground nesting birds like the avocet. The future of our coastline is an uncertain one. With sea levels rising and weather becoming more unpredictable, many of the species that depend on these areas to survive now face a questionable future. Human activity undoubtedly plays an important part in the protection and survival of these wetland environments. With encouragement from man-made reserves and continuous observation, wildlife can be given the chance they need to remain part of our beautiful coastline. Because unless there is global change, areas like these and its inhabitants will be lost to the relentless force of the sea.